The Redskins are a solid fixture in the city of Washington, and in recent years, they have adopted a conservative nature, appropriate for a team representing the nation's capital. Unfortunately, the Redskins' predictability left them one step behind the rest of the NFL, a situation owner Jack Kent Cooke and general manager Bobby Beathard hope to change by hiring Joe Gibbs as the new head coach. As offensive coordinator for the Chargers, Gibbs helped construct the most powerful offense in NFL history, and his aggressive philosophy created excitement throughout the Redskins organization.
Every team you play for, no matter who the head coach is, that team will take on the personality of the head coach. If it's a defensive-oriented individual, it will be a defensive-oriented football team. If it's offensive, it'll be offensive. For the past 7 years here under Coach Allen and Coach Pardee, they're basically defensive mentors. Now finally I've got an offensive coach who, like I say, thinks like I do, and I'm really looking forward to it.
But Theismann and the Redskins' anticipation quickly faded as Washington lost their first 5 games, posting the worst record in professional football. However, in time, Gibbs and his aggressive philosophy prevailed. Despite their bleak beginning, Washington went on to win 8 of their last 11 games and stayed in playoff contention until the final week. In 1981, the Redskins masterfully rewrote a story that began as a tragedy, but ended as a glorious tale of 2 seasons. From day one, Coach Gibbs was well aware of the basic law of survival in the NFL.
Your successes in this league are marked in wins, and I think we're going to have to win to be successful. And I would be kidding anybody if I said any differently. So I think at the end of the season, it'll be the time that we judge, how well we've done this year and what kind of coaching job we did. But I've got everything I think it takes. If I screw this up, it's going to be me doing it.
The Redskins did have their difficulties, but it certainly wasn't just Joe Gibbs' fault. Four of Washington's first 5 losses were to playoff teams, and injury sidelined many key performers. However, it was the inconsistency of the Redskins' new-look offense that proved most frustrating.
There are so many things that can go wrong on offense, and for us they did. We had interceptions, we had fumbles, we had penalties in key situations. Every time we did one thing right, we did 10 things wrong. What we had to do as a football team is we had to simply stop beating ourselves. There never was a feeling of giving up. That's one thing you have to give credit to Joe Gibbs for. Through the entire dismal start of our football team, Coach Gibbs never ever wavered. He never changed his approach, he never changed his practice schedule, he never changed his philosophy. He just said that we're a better football team, we've got to eliminate mistakes, we've got to do the things that we're capable of doing. If we just went out and did the things we could do, we'll win our share of football games. We're that good.
With a new coach, an exciting offense, and talented personnel, the Redskins were better than good. Despite a winless record after 5 weeks of the 1981 season, Washington was the #1 ranked offensive team in the NFC. The passing attack could score from anywhere, and did. The offense utilized backs out of the backfield, tight ends over the middle, and fleet wide receivers down the sidelines. Finally, in Week 6 against the Bears in Soldier Field, the offense and defense put together a winning effort, and Washington recorded its first victory of the season. The 24-7 win lifted Washington over one hurdle. The next obstacle was a much-needed first win at home. Against New England on a rainy Sunday afternoon, the Redskins passed and ran their way back into the hearts of their hometown fans.
Redskins faking it. Are they going after it? Yes. The man was in there but didn't get it. Helms will take the ball at the 25, gets away from a man, tries to cut back. He's at the 30, at the 35, to the 40. He's going. He's at the midfield stripe. He's at the 40. He's gone. Kissing goodbye.
Joe Gibbs said he needed a big play from his return team, the special teams, and he got it right there.
Leading the Patriots 17-15 in the third quarter, quarterback Joe Theismann turned a broken play into a touchdown to help clinch a 24-22 win. Such miscues had haunted the Redskins through their first 5 games. Now it seemed a reversal of Murphy's Law had taken place. Everything that could go right did go right. Coach Gibbs had remodeled a conservative team into one that was exciting and enthusiastic, convincing Jack Kent Cooke and Bobby Beathard that he was one Californian that had come to the nation's capital intent on fulfilling his campaign promises. Fan approval of the new-look Redskins was aided by the return of John Riggins, who after sitting out last season was welcomed back with open arms. 1981 also marked the arrival of Joe Washington, who fit snugly into the Redskins' offensive scheme. Unhappy about his limited playing time in Baltimore, Joe was made a starter in Washington, an opportunity he was determined to hold on to. Darting around the field like a frightened rabbit, Washington ran for nearly 1,000 yards and led the Redskins with 70 receptions on his way to being named Washington's most valuable player. Washington's quickness and evasiveness blended perfectly with the bullish manner in which fullback John Riggins advanced the football. At 6'2", 230 pounds, Riggins would just as soon run over a defender as look at him. Number 44 seemed to thrive on the one-on-one confrontation between runner and tackler. And in 1981, he either carried or ran through tacklers for over 700 yards to become the NFL's 8th all-time leading rusher. Both Riggins and Washington's performances were enhanced by a young and talented offensive line featuring center Jeff Bostic, guards Russ Grimm, Melvin Jones, and Ron Saul, and tackles George Stock, Joe Jacoby, and Mark May. These men also provided the ground clearance for the Redskins' high-flying offense piloted by quarterback Joe Theismann.
I saw the scene.
Well,
So I started coming back.
I threw it that way. I didn't want to lead you because you might have
No,
gone.
that's good. But I saw the
I
scene.
figured you
And
had,
I started
yeah.
coming back.
I know.
But when I came back, I had to move real quick, and I lost the guy. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So if I wouldn't have fell down, I'd have walked in.
I thought so. Yeah, that's okay.
In 1981, Theismann dusted off his goggles, checked his flight maps, and traveled the airways of the NFL more times for more yardage than in any of his previous 8 seasons. Theismann employed the services of all his receivers, including running backs Clarence Harmon, number 38, and Wilbur Jackson, number 40, both talented performers who unfortunately missed much of the season sidelined with injuries. New arrival Terry Metcalf, number 26, remained injury-free and finished third among Redskin receivers with 48 catches. A big surprise at wide receiver was free agent Virgil C., number 80. C led all receivers by averaging over 18 yards per catch while scoring 3 touchdowns. Number 81, Art Monk, surprised no one, recording another excellent season, and his potential appears limitless.
Art Monk's talents have yet to be even scratched. He's faster than most people. He's bigger than almost any wide receiver in the National Football League. He has exceptional concentration powers in traffic. And I always say to him, if I get a one-on-one situation, Art, I'm going to put the ball up, you go get it. And 9 out of 10 times he will come down with it. He's our key receiver, there's no question about it. He's the man who we go to when we have to have something. He likes pressure. He handles pressure exceptionally well. He loves to beat people one-on-one. He's got an inward drive that you don't see in a lot of young men.
In 1981, Monk caught 56 passes for nearly 900 yards, recording the most yardage gained by a Redskin wide receiver in 15 years. In Week 10 of the Redskins' Tale of Two Seasons, Washington concluded a crucial chapter against the Detroit Lions. The brutal contest saw more knockdowns than a heavyweight bout between a couple of barroom brawlers. After 3 quarters of this toe-to-toe slugfest, the punch-drunk Lions seemed ready to fall, and running back Joe Washington delivered what appeared to be the final crushing blow.
A wing to the far side, Walker in motion now to the near side. On first down, Joe Washington to carry. Got blockers inside the 10, the 5, still on his feet to the 2, leans to the 1, did he make it? Touchdown, Joe Washington! Oh my goodness, what a run! Holy moly! That little devil pushed 3 people into the end zone. He is a little devil, isn't he? he is beautiful.
Surprisingly, Detroit picked themselves up off the canvas and took the lead with less than a minute remaining. However, the Redskins had one more knockout punch left.
Mosley to attempt from the 34. It will be a 44-yard kick. The spot will be the right hash mark, the far side hash mark. Theismann says he's ready. Good snap, good hold. Kick is up. It's long enough. It's good! Mosley from 44 yards with 43 seconds left, and they swarm him on the middle of the field. The Redskins jumping.
Boy, this has been a barn burner, hasn't it? Well, that's a great kick by Mosley under pressure, and he made it.
Oh, he kicked it like it was nothing, right down the middle. It was high and long.
One week later, with hearts still pounding, the Redskins again toyed with the emotions and pacemakers of their fans in a game against the playoff-bound Giants. Washington led 24-20 until a late fourth quarter Giant touchdown put New York ahead, and it appeared the Redskins' 3-game winning streak was over. But in the rain and gusting winds, with no time on the clock, Mark Mosley kicked a 49-yard field goal to send the game into sudden death. The kick was Mosley's longest of the season, and just 3 minutes into overtime, he provided Washington with their 4th straight victory and left the already speechless Giant fans in a state of shock with a game-winning kick.
Kick is up. Will it be long enough? Yes. Will it go through? Yes! The football game is over.
It's all over.
At the 11:16 mark in overtime, Mosley from 49 yards out, and the Redskins bench empties onto the field. Joe Theismann jumped into Mosley's arms, a la Yogi Berra with Don Larson.
There goes your giant jinx.
It certainly does, and I think the Redskins proved a lot today in winning this one in overtime.
In Washington's second season comeback, the offense and special teams wrote all the headlines. But it was the Redskin defense that went out and hand-delivered the news. The defense made Redskin leads stand up by simply knocking opponents to the ground. Rookie Dexter Manley, number 72, led a fierce Washington pass rush. Manley's 6 quarterback sacks were second only to team leader Perry Brooks, number 69. Number 65, Dave Butts, anchored the defensive line, having the best season of his 9-year career. Behind the line stood a hard-hitting group of linebackers starring number 52, Neil Olkowitz, Monty Coleman, and Brad Dusek, number 59. These men protected their end zone as if being scored upon was an invasion of their personal property. While the line and linebackers squeezed opposing offenses by the throat, Redskin defensive backs were poised and ready to grab anything that was choked up. Free safety Mark Murphy, number 29, led all defenders in tackles, fumble recoveries, and interceptions. His 7 thefts were 3 more than second-place finisher Joe Lavender, number 20. In 1981, the Redskins held opponents to under a 50% completion rate for the 6th consecutive season and intercepted an impressive total of 24 passes, including one by reserve safety Mike Nelms. But Nelms did not make his living as a defensive back. Number 21 earned his paycheck as professional football's premier kick returner. Nelms seemed to be in a class by himself as he led the NFL in average yards per kickoff return and established 3 new club records. Number 21 was selected to both the All-Pro and Pro Bowl squads and helped maintain the high level of excellence that has become a trademark of the Redskins special team. In Week 14, the Redskins had to first sweep away bitter memories of an early season loss to Philadelphia before beginning the final chapter in their tale of 2 seasons. Head coach Dick Vermeil and the Eagles were fighting to win a division championship, while the Washington Redskins were desperately trying to stay alive for a wild card berth. Unfortunately, after 2 Eagle touchdowns, Washington's heartbeat slowed down and nearly stopped. Trailing 13-6 at the half, the Redskins seemed enveloped in an old but too familiar cloud of uncertainty. However, the 1981 Redskins had become a team composed and determined. And in the final 2 quarters, Washington defeated the Eagles at their own game, defense. The Redskins shut out Philadelphia in the second half, an accomplishment aided by 2 interceptions, the most crucial occurring early in the 4th quarter. Monty Coleman's 52-yard interception return clinched an important Washington victory, for the win signified not only the comeback of a single game, but of an entire season. After Philadelphia, the Redskins easily defeated Baltimore and Los Angeles and won 8 of their last 11 games, nearly earning a wild card spot in the playoffs. It was certainly an incredible ending to a memorable season. So went the story of the 1981 Washington Redskins. They were a team that soared to new heights on the wings of a new coach and a new philosophy. They were a team that in defeat never lost their poise and won as much with emotion as they did with talent. But most important of all, the 1981 Washington Redskins wrote a happy ending to their tale of 2 seasons. On February 2nd, 1983, 500,000 rain-drenched people lined the streets of Washington, D.C. to welcome home a world champion. For the first time in 40 years, Washington ruled the football world, and the NFL's Coach of the Year, Joe Gibbs, gladly shared the glory with an entire city.
I don't think today could be a greater testimony to the fact that there's no other fans in the world that would come out on a day like this except in Washington, D.C. And I want you to know that each one of you has a small piece of this trophy today. Hail to the Redskins! Hail victory! Braves on the warpath! Fight for old D.C.!
In his 5th year as Redskin general manager, Bobby Beathard had mixed 17 draft choices with 8 trades and 28 free agents, then watched them travel all the way to Super Bowl 17. A powerful 27-17 triumph over Miami was the realization of an impossible dream which had begun 20 weeks earlier in Philadelphia. Against the Eagles, Washington started fast on Joe Theismann's rifle right arm and the flying feet of Charlie Brown. But it was all-pro kicker Mark Mosley who tied the game at 34, then won it in overtime.
Hold is good. Kick is up long enough. It's good. Mark Mosley's toe is sent into overtime, and Mark Mosley's toe has won it in overtime. The Redskins are 1-0. The Eagles are 0-1.
In week 2, Washington got wet. A Tampa Bay monsoon made every play an adventure. Aggressive play by the Washington defense and extra effort by special teamer Curtis Jordan, who blocked a Buccaneer punt, then recovered it in the end zone, helped swamp out a second Washington win, 21-13. All season long, Redskins special teams answered the call of Coach Wayne Sevier.
Count them off, and then let's stick the leather to them. Let's go!
Return teams cleared the way for Mike Nelms, who set a Redskin career record for punt return yardage in only his 3rd season. These same men also led the entire NFC in covering both kickoffs and punts. Washington special teams were indeed special, and when the NFL strike hit, their unity helped hold the Redskins together. 8 weeks went by, but when play resumed, it was as if not one day had passed.
Hey, first hit of the game, first hit of the new season. Kick some ass.
The Redskins returned to ransack the New York Giants. The Washington defense was as ornery as ever, while Theismann and Brown were still timed to perfection. Charlie Brown scored his 3rd touchdown in as many games, then turned matters over to the offensive line. George Stark, Jeff Bostic, Mark May, Joe Jacoby, Fred Dean, and Russ Grimm blasted holes for running backs Clarence Harmon and John Riggins. This hard rock running game helped pound out a 27-17 win over the Giants. The offensive line had come on strong thanks to the weight training program provided by strength coach Dan Riley, and a nickname given to them by their line coach, Joe Bugle. Bugle simply called them the Hogs.
Just happened one day at practice at summer camp. I said, okay, you Hogs, let's get down to the bullpen down there. And the guys kind of chuckled about it because I use it as more or less an affectionate term. All of a sudden, this bunch really started hanging together. They become closer and closer and closer. They played hard together, and it's really mushroomed.
Suddenly, Washington was investing in hog futures. These huge porkers weren't graceful or pretty, but they sure loved their work. And so it was that the capital of the free world became hog heaven, and only one outsider was allowed to join the exclusive fraternity, a groundhog named John Riggins. Behind his vintage swine, Riggins added another analogy. He was also known as the Diesel.
Look out, killer, here comes the Diesel. Yes, sir, here it comes on 395.
While Riggins ran over an opponent, scatback Joe Washington improvised his way as the Washington Redskins went hog wild, even quarterback Joe Theismann. Theismann's block won him the Hog's love and the title Honorary Piglet. But Joe's specialty was not blocking, it was dashing. The dash play looked like a straight drop back, then sent number 7 sprinting out behind his pulling Hogs. This controlled scramble took advantage of Theismann's mobility and gave him extra time to find the open man. Joe dashed all season, completing 64% of his passes to receivers of all shapes and sizes. A powerful tight end like Don Warren, or a sleek and graceful wide receiver named Art Monk, who was tall enough to play over a cornerback's head. Also available were tiny receivers who could run under a defender's armpits. Number 89 was 5 feet 7, Alvin Garrett, while his larger friend, Virgil C., towered 5 feet 8. Joe Theismann had a nickname ready.
Alvin, where's Virgil? Hey, Smurf, Virgil!
You know, it's amazing. Virgil's the smallest guy in the ball club. He's the only guy sitting down watching the game on the ground.
Soon, Washington wanted to know, what's a Smurf?
Smurf 1 and Smurf 2 back into the game. What's that mean? Smurf? You know, haven't you seen the little blue-faced dolls the kids have? No. Smurfs, you haven't seen them on television, Sam? You got to get up on Saturday morning and watch TV. You see them Smurfs all the time.
The Smurfs were protected by the Hogs, coached by all-time great Redskin receiver Charlie Taylor, and befriended by a sort of super Smurf 5 foot 10-inch Charlie Brown, who played much taller. After a year on injured reserve, Brown took a flying leap at NFL starter. Charlie Brown had defenders crying, "Good grief," as he scored 10 touchdowns in 13 games, made the Pro Bowl, and averaged over 20 yards per spectacular catch.
Hand to Riggins, end around to Monk, pitch back to Theismann, lets it go deep. He's got Charlie Brown down there, well covered. He makes the catch at the 5 and dives to the 2. Charlie Brown, what an incredible catch. Whoa, what a play.
Against Philadelphia, Brown led Washington on a victory march, and the Redskins dashed to their 4th straight win. Brown was averaging a touchdown per game as offensive assistants Don Breaux, Warren Simmons, and Dan Henning congratulated the NFL's only undefeated coach, Joe Gibbs. In the bizarre beginning of 1982, the undefeated Redskins were threatening to run away and hide from the rest of the NFL. Cynics said the Redskins were nothing but a joke and waited for them to self-destruct. In December, the Dallas Cowboys came to town and tripped up the Redskins. In a 24-10 defeat, Theismann was sacked 7 times as the confident Cowboys had the last laugh. The doomsayers predicted the end of Washington's title hopes, but Dave Butts was determined not to let them die. The next week in St. Louis, Butts and the blue-collar boys of the Washington defense rolled up their sleeves and went to work. The defense held St. Louis to a touchdown, and Mark Mosley hammered out 4 field goals for a 12-7 Washington win. 1 week later, in the snows of RFK, the defense held New York to 139 total yards. With time almost gone, Washington trailed 14-12, leaving Mosley one chance to make history.
A 42-yard attempt, plenty long enough. It's good! Mark Mosley has broken the National Football League record.
Mosley's record 23rd consecutive field goal provided a heart-stopping 15-14 win over the Giants, and Washington fans knew a championship defense was shaping up. Barging up the middle was Dave Butts. Covering the outside was cat-quick Dexter Manley, number 72. Closing down from the other end was number 76, Matt Mendenhall. Sharing time were Perry Brooks and number 77, Darrell Grant, with pass rushing specialist Tony McGee. Defensive coaches Richie Pettibone, Torgy Torgerson, Larry Peccatello, and Bill Hickman preached pursuit and gang tackling. Especially active were the linebackers, Mel Kaufman, Neil Olkowitz, and Rich Millott, supported by backups Monty Coleman and Larry Cuban. This unsung Washington defense gave up the fewest points in the NFL, thanks to hitters like strong safety Tony Peters. Rookie Vernon Dean stepped in at cornerback and made all the big plays, while nickelback Joe Lavender provided veteran stability. Cornerback Jarris White played in his 129th consecutive NFL game and led Washington with 5 interceptions, while the team's leading tackler for the 4th straight season was free safety Mark Murphy. The blue-collar boys were working their way to the playoffs. They demolished the New Orleans Saints 27-10, then constructed the first Redskins shutout in 2 years against St. Louis. Washington worked the Cardinals over 28-0, and Joe Theismann threw his 12th and 13th touchdown passes of the season, including one to tight end Rick Walker. Walker and the Redskins had been working on high fives all year, and while some of the youngsters had trouble picking it up, everyone finally got their act together, and the Fun Bunch was born. The Fun Bunch celebrated an 8-1 record, the best in the NFL, and chairman of the board, Jack Kent Cooke, spoke for the entire city.
I am in a state of ecstasy. Never mind that nonsense about euphoria and so on. It is sheer, unadulterated, uncompromising ecstasy.
The Redskins were ready. Just ahead lay the NFL playoffs. Washington opened the playoffs at home against Detroit with some ominous signs on the horizon. Art Monk was out with a stress fracture, and workhorse John Riggins had missed the final regular season game with a bruised thigh. But Joe Gibbs knew his defense was peaking at just the right time.
The Lions driving towards the end zone to our right. 3 wide receivers. To the near side is Porter. Flanked out to the far side, Leonard Thompson and David Hill. Back to pass is Hipple. Rushes on. Gets it off near side. Picked off. Picked off by Jarris White. He's gone. He's going 70 yards. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
Jarris White's touchdown got Washington started in the right direction, and Art Monk's Smurfish replacement looked 10 feet tall. Alvin Garrett had only 1 reception during the regular season. In the playoffs, he would catch 15 passes for 5 touchdowns, including 3 against Detroit. Only Smurf-like kindness spared the Lions further embarrassment. Riggins hunkered down behind his fellow Hogs and began an incredible journey behind a crushing lead block thrown by Otis Walmsley. The Diesel was off on the longest haul in the history of the NFL playoffs. Riggins rushed for 610 yards in 4 playoff games, beginning with 119 against the Lions in a crushing 31-7 Washington victory. But Russ Grimm and the Hogs were still getting no respect.
See who wins. Today we won. They said that they're going to come in here, you know, they're the butchers and we're the hogs. The thing they forgot is before a hog goes to the butcher, somebody got to kill it, and nobody even come close today.
The Minnesota Vikings came no closer the next week. The Vikings spent all day looking for a place to hang on to this runaway truck. Then Riggins and the Redskins crossed them up. Theismann completed 68% of his playoff passes for 8 touchdowns. With the Redskins leading 21-7, Riggins simply ran out the clock.
Riggins gets the carry, coming near side, cuts back against the grain to the 30, to the 35, breaks it loose to the 40, he's to midfield, down to the 45 of the Vikings. Big run, John Riggins.
John Riggins had carried 37 times for 185 yards. But already Redskin fans were looking ahead to a Dallas rematch. The NFC title was at stake, but even more was on the line. Washington's Warriors were duty-bound to avenge their only loss.
Those shots, defense. Let's see what happens. Gets the snap. Back. Blitz is on. Check. Fumble the football. It's down at the 40-yard line. Danny White looks like he's knocked out. Oh, he is out. Yeah! Dallas, the chant still goes. I tell you, that's got to be intimidating. 50,000 people screaming, "We want Dallas." Play action fake to Dorsett. Hit the ball well. Set up a screen, batted in the air, picked off by Darryl Grant. Touchdown, Washington Redskins! I don't believe it. Unbelievable. Dexter Manley tipped the pass. Darryl Grant got the interception, and now the stadium shakes. Oh, they're going crazy at RFK. Look at this. Look at
this. Washington defeated Dallas 31-17 for one of the most glorious victories in the Redskins' 42-year history. This assortment of Smurfs, Hogs, Fun Bunchers, and Blue-Collar Boys had proved their critics wrong and united to form a true team, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. Hail to Joe Gibbs and the Washington Redskins, champions of the world for 1982. The 1982 Washington Redskins highlights were brought to you by Busch Beer. Remember, don't just reach for a beer, head for the mountains.